Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another Ancient Irish Tales. And today we start the Finn cycle of Irish mythology. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we start the Finn cycle, also known as Cycle of Finn, Oisin, and their companions. This is the third cycle in the great cycles of Irish heroic literature, known as the Finn or Oisinic cycle. According to the Irish annals, Finn flourished during the 3rd century after Christ. But the earliest references to him in literature did not appear until several hundred years later. And while the vast majority of these tales about him are found in manuscripts dating from the 12th and later centuries, these accounts are composed at various times from the Middle Ages down to the 19th century. They differ greatly in their conceptions of Finn, although in regard to him, they all regard him as a chief. He is a chief of a Finn or warrior band, among whom the most are distinguished heroes are, his son Oisin and his grandson Oscar. One group of tales represents him as the head of sort of a national militia in the employ of one of the High Kings of Ireland, usually called the 100 Finger. Another as powerful enough to oppose the High King, while a third, perhaps the latest, elevates him to a position of superior to all opponents, portraying him as, a slayer of monsters. In general, though, benefactor for his country, and above all, a national defender of Ireland against foreign invaders, especially the Vikings. The Finn cycle, it differs remarkably from that of the Ulster. The tales are much more numerous and were in general written down at a much later date than those of the Ulster cycle. Moreover, a few of them flourish linguistic evidence of having been composed before the 12th century. Nor do they, as a rule, contain references to ancient manners and customs, such as those that give the Ulster epics their value as pictures of pre-Christian culture. This is an important note because since we're done the Ulster cycle, that is what gives us the majority of referencing for our pre-Christian practices of Irish Celtic paganism. The Finn cycle, whereas the Ulster tales, as we have seen, are usually written in prose interspersed with semi-lyric passages and verses. The Finn cycle material contains only narratives in prose, but also many poems of a ballad type. Though few tales of the Ulster cycle have been preserved in modern Irish folklore, the exploits of Finn and his companions have formed part of the popular literature of the Gaelic-speaking Ireland and Scotland from the Middle Ages very well to the present day. In other words, the Ulster epic appears to have been from 8th to 9th century of literary popularity and aristocracy, while the Finn materials was perhaps from the beginning of literature of the folk and was more or less modernized by each succeeding generation of folk poets and popular storytellers. As the origin of the Finn epic, much remains yet to be learned. It appears from early references in the annals and other sources that Finn's company was only one of many Finn or bands of warriors that existed in ancient Ireland and were a recognized feature of the social system. Since the oldest traditions represent Finn as having his chief stronghold on the hill of Almon in the modern near Kildare, it is well inferred that his femin belonged to Leinster. Opposed to Finn and the other Finna, especially Finnan of Gol MacMorna, which is identified with Conquerant. According to one view, the Finna of Finn and his opponents were bands of soldiers levied by the rule of a Meslian high kings upon older subjects of the people of Ireland. These bands were forced to be ready to take up arms at any time. Coincidentally, were purveyed from earning a livelihood by continuous application of occupations of peace. Hence, they lived in war times by the deputation in the peace by hunting. Professor Ian McNeill calls the Finn epic the epic of a subject race, and thus explains the scarcity of Finn material in the earliest Irish manuscripts, as well as the continued popularity of the Finn ballads and stories among the folk. As a hunter and popular hero, Finn resembles Robin Hood more nearly than he does any other figure in the English tradition. So welcome to these tales of the Finn cycle.